Rock on, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm your host, Jeremiah Fox. It is time for the Entrepreneurial Web. Today, very special guest. Before we get started, a brief history. I have mentioned before, some of you know, but for those of you who don't, I have a master's degree in music performance and percussion from the University of Buffalo, which I received in 2004. So I spent about three and a half years of my life up there, learning the craft in music, but also performing and teaching. And I had a large number of students throughout my period there. And my guest today is a former student. He was a teenager at the time. He'll correct me if I'm wrong when he comes on, but I believe he was about 13 or 14. And we're talking, that was like 15, 16 years ago. So he's a grown-ass man now, and very active with his own music business, but also really, really hot on social media. And just always, we reconnected somewhere along the line, and he really captured my attention with particularly his positivity and just his solid, relentless, good messages. So today I'm going to quote him. He just popped this up on Facebook the other day, and I just could not agree more. 1000%. Motivation is what gets you started. Habit is what keeps you going. And like, we've all developed some habits lately, some good, some bad, especially since March. So we'll dissect that a little bit today, talk about this amazingly talented young man and what he's got going on. With that, I would like to welcome to the show, Michael Khoury. Michael, how in the hell are you? It has been a long time.
Jeremiah, so nice to see you. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
You're grown. Where's the little long-haired teenager?
You know, I had the big poofy hair and
you
playing
did.
the drum set.
Dude.
And I owe you so much, you know, for those early years, for what you taught me sitting behind the set. Not just theory, but you just taught me like a great mentality to have fun playing music. And I always still reflect back to those lessons here in East Aurora, sitting behind that, double back-to-back kit with you. So thank you for having me on the show. Such a pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. And I was going to ask, like, I wanted to take credit for all your positivity. And then I was looking back, I was like, nah, it wasn't me. We weren't talking about that back then. We were just having fun. So Michael is an amazing, is it Doombeck? Was that what you used to bring in all the time?
Yeah, Darbuka.
Yeah, there you go. He's got her. I knew you was going to rip it out today. He would come in with this drum. And he's like just a little bit bigger than the damn thing at the time, and just like tear it up. And I'm like, this kid's got some beat. Not for nothing. It's in his blood. His dad is a very, very successful musician as well. Amin Sultan, and has played all over the world, right? And you got to see that as a kid, and you got to participate as a grown man too. So what I think we spoke on the phone once. Like, it was probably close to like 10 years ago or something like that. And otherwise, we haven't seen each other. And so this is the first time we've actually spoken. And I love doing this with the show, especially, you asked, and I was like, hey, will you come on? You're like, dude, I got to come to New York. Like, that used to be the thing. I've been doing this show for about a year now. And we always, the studio is right over by Madison Square Garden. So we would always have our guests in studio. And that was like the requirement, because people would reach out and say, hey, can I be on your show? And I'm like, yeah, if you come to New York. And not happening. But the amazing thing happened when we had to go remote, and it really got me out of my own limitations, where I was like, no, I really want like the intimacy. I love that, that's my thing. Like, now I own a restaurant, and I do a lot. I've run several businesses that are all based on intimacy and human connection. So I was like, no, that's how I operate. But this has been really great in helping me connect with people, first of all, that I never would have had the opportunity to otherwise, and it's been fantastic. But then to do stuff like this, and like, we didn't even talk, we just like sent a couple messages, and I just love the gray area. And it's like how we used to play, right? We would just sit down and be like, what are we going to do today? And I'd be like, all right, you start. No, you start. And then just like play a beat, and we had that kind of communication. So it's gonna be fun to see how this plays out today.
Absolutely. And that's what I love too about the lessons, was I didn't feel that I was so regimented, and it took the fun out of it. I would sit with you, and we would just create, and I would play something, and you'd be like, okay, add this. And then it just made me grow into really loving, being a drummer, was because of, being with you. So I look forward to the interview today. Thank you again.
Yeah, it's awesome. So let's give everybody a little background of you. You grew up just outside of Buffalo in East Aurora, just south of the city. Again, your father, very, very successful musician, and you and your brother as well. Like, started very early. So when you came to me, you had the nasty beat already. Dude had swing. He was like, dang, 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 dang. It was no problem. You just like, you were transferring it to like 4 limbs and putting it on the drum set. You pick it up from there. That's all I remember.
Yeah, I mean, I just consider it all a blessing. Thank God. Grew up in the small town of East Aurora. Had you as a big inspiration. Of course, had my father. I'm here in his music room where it all started.
Yeah.
Where I got my first Yamaha electronic kit, and
Oh yeah.
me and Alex would jam in here. He'd be playing on the guitar AC/DC on his Gibson SG, and we'd just be jamming. And of course, too, be practicing with Dad in here. He'd be playing the keyboard and singing. Still does.
Yeah, I've seen.
So this room is really just kind of where everything started. So I wanted to take the interview back into here, and
beautiful.
It's been the source of all my learning, most of my life. But yeah, just grew up, with Dad. By the time I was maybe a little bit older than doing lessons with you, maybe a year or so, about 14, started doing, traveling with him around the country, playing darbuka and playing any percussion I could get my hands on. And then moving to bringing the drum set into the Arabic world and doing world percussions and regular, American set into that and integrating it. It was a lot of fun, did it too throughout college and still to this day. And then just transitioned into moving into other different types of percussive instruments, and then keyboard, which was huge for me, just helping me to be able to do melodies and enjoy a melody was a big step. And then from there transitioned into DJing. So it's been quite a wild ride.
Yeah, definitely. And but you were also involved, like the first social media stuff I saw from you is going back years. It was definitely like more business oriented. Did you study business in college? Is that the direction you were taking at the time?
Yeah, at University of Buffalo, I studied international trade. So I took Arabic, learned how to read and write, and love that business aspect of it, and then wanted to just blend it with the music because I'd see so many, aside from my family, just so many successful people who were able to do what they love and cash in on their passion while providing value to others and making others happy. So
I got to ask, just because I heard so many of these messages coming through, and it's also been a big influence on me, you have to be down with Gary Vee.
Love him.
Okay. I'm just like, man, this guy, he had to have watched some like Gary Vee videos. That's so funny. Yeah. It's funny for me because I got into him and I was still doing a lot of music when I first moved to the city, but it's just like, it's really, you can make a decent living up in Buffalo doing it. Here it's a little bit different. You don't make a lot of money in the city. So if you're not traveling, or there's a number of other things you can do. I just, we started to have kids and stuff as soon as we moved here. So the food industry just kind of took over, which I did up there. I don't know if you remember that, but I definitely spent a lot of time in that. And I started selling wine pretty early on. And my buddy was like, yo, you like, talking about wine in these strange ways. You should check this guy out. This was like 2007. So I checked out Wine Library TV, and I was like, oh, amazing. And I watched it for like 6 months, and then we got really busy, and just like I got into the world and was like opening mad businesses and all kinds of crazy stuff. And for like 10 years, like just didn't even use YouTube. I was like, people would be like, go to YouTube. And I'm like, I don't know how. But a friend like 10 years later sends me this clip and he was in it. And I was like, I remember that guy. And I was like, he's not talking about wine anymore. What happened? And like, he was like this mega personality. And I was like, oh, wow. But the message was the same thing that kind of I always felt. And it was really awesome seeing you kind of exuding that same thing. And I was like, I'm watching this kid now. It's like, you're back on my radar. And here we are. I used your quote a couple weeks ago because I interviewed, do you know a drummer named Ted Poor? He was from up there, actually.
No, I don't, but I'll definitely look him up.
Yeah, you should. He's amazing. He's from just outside of Rochester, and he went to Eastman when my wife was going to the University of Rochester. So I became familiar with him back then. But now he's on Impulse Records. He's played with everybody under the sun. And he did a duo album at the beginning of the year with one of my neighbors who's out, like the neighborhood we live in Brooklyn. It's just like the most ridiculous, amazing musicians. Like all these guys that are like internationally renowned artists. This is just where they live. And like our kids went to school together and stuff like that. It's really funny. If they did like an all-star band in my neighborhood, it would just like eat your face off. Like Yanni would be like, damn, you know what I'm saying? Like they're that good. So one of my neighbors did a duo album with him, and I just was a really big fan, and we were even going to do a little release show at one of my places, and it all fell through because of COVID. So I brought them on the show a couple weeks ago, and right before I did, you posted something. You posted that Aldous Huxley quote, and I used it. So I've already quoted you on the show once. So you're seeping in. You're seeping in. It's funny because I'm like I was a big Aldous Huxley fan even as a teen. I started reading him, and when you dropped that, I was like, So throughout the course of the show, it'd be great. We don't have to do it all at once. Talk about those factors, especially in terms of business, because I've found a bunch of different ways to do it where, we got into music because we love the way it made us feel, right? In that expression. And you spoke already about, being able to share your passion. And for guys like you and I, a lot of that has to do with like just sharing this thing we have inside of us. And when we met, we didn't even talk about it. It was just like, I remember that first lesson. You just came in and started playing. I was like, oh, you got a little toy? And you're like, huh? And I was like, okay.
It was right there. It was just right from the beginning.
Exactly. And it's great to see that you've really taken it throughout your life as well. Like, I don't know about you, my journey was quite a meandering one, but, based off your social media posts, it seems like you had a little bit more of a straight line. I could be mistaken, and we have the whole show to kind of hash that out. But what did you do first in terms of business? You got this international trade degree from UB. What was like the first move? I know you always had music around and doing it, but what was kind of the first move in terms of the business aspect of your career?
Yeah, the first move really was right out of college, went into like a medical sales job, realized that that kind of wasn't for me, stifling my creativity, kind of like put me in a little bit of a box. And so from there, it ended up just not working out at all. So that was when I was about 22 or so. And I just tried different things. I went and worked in family businesses doing sales. I always knew sales was something I loved because that's the lifeblood of any business. What really, I feel what really changed my direction in life was when I got into, and till this day, it's not something that I was at all successful in, but it gave me the mindset, was network marketing. I got into it because of the books and the personal development that I would start reading, the people I was around that just constantly focused on good input equaling good output. So whatever you read, what you listen to every day ends up coming out. So what I did was I got into some of those businesses in the legal and insurances industry. And again, it wasn't something that I took off or did super well in network marketing, but I took that and I applied it into music, into being a percussionist, into DJing, into just the whole aspect of being a holistic consultant for music. And that's where I just felt like it just started to take off, because all I would be doing is providing value to people, going above and beyond. And it just started, those little seeds I planted started growing. So till this day, I just still enjoy reading positive, books, positive quotes, listening to, positive messages, and then applying that into business. Of course, mixing that with practicality too, seeing what other successful people have done and then modeling that. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, no, it's perfect. It's beautiful. Awesome. And sharing them too, because you've been dropping little bits on Instagram and Facebook. And really that's what captured my attention. So cool. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and I want to pick up with like the transition away from those industries and really plugging it into music and being successful that way. So hang tight, everybody. We'll be back in just a few. Yes. Welcome back, folks. If you're just tuning in, you were listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. I'm your host, Jeremiah Fox. My guest today is actually a former music student of mine many, many moons ago when I was a drum instructor and music instructor in Buffalo, New York. We have since reconnected. It's been about 15 years. It's our second time actually catching up in that period, but it's been quite a long time since we've talked. So welcoming back to the show, Michael Khoury. He, did a business degree at University of Buffalo. Always had music in his life. His father's a professional musician. His brother as well. Big musical family, and he has taken his approach and his lessons from business, like big business, industry business, and plugged it into the music industry. So I'd love to hear now, transitioning from your stint in, I think you said insurance, and there was something else. what you discovered from there and how that helped you build the business that you have now, which seems to be doing well, even in a pandemic time.
Thank God. So, just as time went on, I got out of college, tried a bunch of different things, network marketing being something that
Network marketing, that's what it was, yes.
Yeah, it just helped me to kind of get the mindset of, reading and digesting good material and applying it realistically, into what I love to do. So basically from there, I had the blessing of course, still touring with dad after college, working a full time. Anybody I would read, the business greats would talk about keep your full-time job, as long as you can while building your passion on the side. Gary Vee talks about it.
Absolutely.
The great Jim Rohn and many others. So that's just basically what I started doing. I didn't want to jump in 2 feet first and then be desperate for every single opportunity. I figured I would just still use my degree, what I'd studied, build on that, and then also on the side, just continue to cultivate and grow with music. So continued working, with my dad, of course, still till this day, touring and doing, Lebanese and Arabic, shows all over. But then also too, I started getting into learning about DJing, and that really was what kind of helped things, to explode. So basically while touring with dad, I would start, DJing, doing announcements, all that stuff in between, instead of just focusing on, rocking out behind the kit. And then afterwards, I don't want to think about anything. I figured, okay, I'm going to take more responsibility here. I'm going to, kind of be the MC for the event, the person who handles everything. Let the band worry about the music. I'll handle kind of officiating everything from there. So that just started to pay off. I was blessed enough to hook up with a couple of multi-ops DJ companies in Buffalo too. Then started doing gigs on my own. So between, music, between, playing live music, between, the companies, and then between what I'm bringing in just on my own, it just started to snowball. So my goal is, of course, in the near future, just slowly it's building into something that's going to be full-time, where I can, let go of the full-time job eventually. But my thought is I want to let go of that full-time career with benefits and everything when it becomes absolutely ridiculous and makes no sense for me to be working there anymore. Because, I just want to do things smart and the right way. But I'm just going as hard as I can on every opportunity I can musically.
Yeah, no, that part is obvious. That part is really obvious. And then, so right now you're still currently working, like you saw, no, that's absolutely the smartest thing to do. I mean, I've opened like 5 or 6 businesses, since moving to New York City. Some of them I don't have anymore. Some of them I still do, but the whole, what's that?
Mostly in the restaurant area.
Mostly,
right?
yeah. There's been some retail shops as well, where there's no service. We're just selling product. But yeah, most of it's been in the food and beverage industry. And the same thing, like I've had a steady job with one company throughout, and gotten to the point where I can create my own schedule there. As I handle my certain responsibilities and like a general manager for the company, but it allows me these offshoots. And I think that's a fascinating way to do it, because you always have to have something to fall back on. One of my early mentors said, he's been on the show recently too, he said it's better to own 20% of 5 things than 100% of one. And this guy gave me so much great advice over the years. I worked for him I was like the age you were when you and I, got together. I worked for him as a teen, and in like my 20, like I might have been 20 or 21 when I moved to Buffalo, and stopped working for him. And he said so many great things to me, and that's the only thing that stuck. But I didn't forget that one, and that really became the foundation of everything I did. And like Gary Vaynerchuk's always talking about, like, your 80 might become your 20 and flip. So you always have to, like, what the whack-a-mole, I always think of that, that old arcade game where the thing's popping up and you just sit, you're like, oh, now I'm hammering this one, don't worry about those. Like, oh, that now it's this one. And that's a great way to approach. And I like your emphasis on the realistic application of all this, because you see a lot of people that are like, they get that information and they think it's going to be just like overnight, I'm going to be like sitting on the beach, in the Bahamas and running my business. Like, it's not really available. But you're also somebody who just like seems to want to work and like go after it. And you know, it's amazing to me that you're doing all this with music while still, you know, involved in another industry. But the two could merge. It could really turn into something, you know, rather fascinating. Are you familiar? I had another friend of mine who's also a DJ here in New York come on the show less than a year ago. He's hooked up with, I think it was called The Knot.
Yes.
And they have like a sister company now. They kind of merged. It was like two things. And he said once he got on there, his business just blew up. Obviously, same thing. His whole thing was about providing value. He just really wanted to do his best, and he's done a great job with that. His reviews are stellar. But I was just curious when you were saying that you were talking about hooking up with like certain groups in Buffalo. You utilize that? Is that giving you some success?
I'm actually studying exactly what I want to put on there, and
Gotcha.
Just to be totally candid, I'm modeling other successful people that I know who are around the country, you know, to build my, you know, Wedding Wire and The Knot their way, my website their way too. So I'm still in the very early stages, but I'm more or less deciding exactly what I want. I'm getting the vision for how I want to present that digitally to the customer. Aside from just posting videos, having fun and photo shoots, I want it to be, you know, just a very thorough and a good snapshot of what I can provide. So
absolutely. The fascinating part to me too, now that, you know, so I have a music studio here as well. I've continued to kick stuff out. I eventually went more the self-production route. Like the theme song is mine. I started to just write and do my own, mainly instrumental music. A lot of work as just a drummer for like just indie singer-songwriters. There's just like tons of that. But they'll, you know, they have a little funding. They're kind of doing it themselves. Been on a couple labeled releases, but most of it's just been like indie stuff. So still always kept that in, you know, and continue to do that and still practice all the time. But getting involved into the show, especially, and the whole multimedia thing, then I was like, oh, this is what I wanted all along. I was just playing music, but like what I really wanted, like once I started getting into video work, and that I was just like, this is amazing because I can still fold the music in. Like we write all the music for the stuff, but like video is so amazing to me. It just opened up this Pandora's box, and then you get to really be the curator of like what you were talking about, like what you want your digital stamp to be, and the reach is just like exponential. It's like it's never been before, and that has got me so excited. It sounds like the same for you. Is that true? Do you feel that way? Like incorporating the visuals, the audio, the networking. Like I love the network. It's amazing. You know, I just love to talk. That's why I'm on the show. You know,
you're amazing at it. First and foremost, with that intro, when I heard that beat, I said, that's gotta be you. Right then and there. That's jazzy, like funky swing.
Yeah.
Your signature on it, but 100%. And I'm learning that too, even though it seems like total common sense, but it's when you have that video and that multimedia, everything today is digital. So you're able to control exactly what you want everybody to see and paint yourself, and bring other people on, provide value to them, share, and open up any opportunity you want in a multimedia world like that. So I'm so proud to see you, you know, doing this and having your own show and studio. It's amazing. And the best part is you're the director of the train. You know, you're wherever wants to go.
Well, it's like, I feel like you got that too. Like your dad was putting on these mega shows and stuff like that. And you were part of that as well. And it seems like you've done the same thing where like when you are the MC, you're running the whole, you know, kind of the whole back end thing for this person's wedding, for their super special day. You know, you become like the head producer. And I didn't realize at the time, especially like when I was in school, but I really love that. That's why you open a business, you know, like just to be, I don't know, I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. And that's like the direction it seems like you're taking now too.
For sure. It's almost, and I say this to myself, in this arena, in the music industry, in live events, it's like, I want the ball when the game is on the line, because I like to solve problems. I like to figure it out. And I like to deliver for the people, you know, just like you.
So you've said a couple things, you've alluded to it, and your dad and I have discussed briefly, but he's been doing jiu-jitsu for the last few years at least, correct? Have you taken the dive yet? Have you gone in?
I started when I was maybe 14 or 15. I did it a little bit.
Oh, really? Back then? Okay.
back then, but I didn't stick with it. I just wanted to stay with music. Like, and of course he was able to do both, but you know, I was in school and I was just like, no, me and Alex, I just want to play music with my brother and, you know, tour with dad and try and do as best as I can in school, like during the week. But he's stuck with it, and he's on his third black belt now. He has a whole wall here of
Really?
swords and belts, and he teaches.
Yeah.
And
that's amazing. It's all about dynamic problem solving. And that's like I got hooked in. We're going to have to take another break. We can pick it up when we get back. I started 5 years ago, and he said something. I put a post up or something, and he chimed in, and it was about jujitsu, and this whole like conversation ensued. And it's like, it literally like you gotta do it. As soon as schools open back up, you gotta get in there.
I want to hear about your journey with the martial arts too.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we'll take a break. We'll pick up with that when we come back, everybody. Hang tight. Welcome back, everybody. Happy Friday again. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. I'm your host, Jeremiah Fox. Today, we have zoomed to Buffalo, New York, where I used to live. I went to grad school there, studied music, and taught music. And today, it is an absolute pleasure to have one of my former students, Michael Khoury, on the show, who is now a professional musician himself. Like, just great to see that connection. We were talking about Michael's history, studying business, growing up in a musical family, professional music father, and trying to fuse all those things together. But one thing he's mentioned a few times in the show, and that his father and I have spoken about briefly, is the dynamic problem solving you get to practice on a regular basis in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which his father has done for a while, and I've been at for 5 years. And Michael's homework assignment after the show, this is your practice assignment. I need 17 paradiddles and 17 arm bars.
I'm on it.
Yeah, so as school opened up a few doors down from my restaurant, right when we opened it 5 years ago, they opened like literally the same time. Local family lives in a neighborhood where we live. Everybody, you know, it's Brooklyn, it's a big city, but we're in like this tiny little village. You know, it's like East Aurora. It's got a main street. All the businesses are right there, completely residential. All surrounding it, but the train runs right through it, and you hop on, and like 8 stations later, you're in Lower Manhattan, and voila. But like, even there's a big hill at the top, and you can't even see the city from where we're at. So we're like in this little incubated spot, which is beautiful. And almost all the businesses are locally owned. There's like a CVS, and there was like huge protest against it. It was, or not a CVS, Walgreens. Like all these old ladies were sitting in the parking lot with like picket signs, and I was like, wow, this is a great old school neighborhood. So, you know, it's a lot of small businesses and locally owned businesses. So this local couple, you know, our kids went to school together, but I didn't really know them that well. They opened a few doors down, and so it was just like there was class every day. So I just always had a bag packed with a gi ready to go, and it just like took over my brain. And a lot of it had to do. I mean, I love to exercise, always been really athletic, and love to move my body. So that, you know, I was already doing that, but it was great to like get another practice going. But when I realized like that it was this practice and just like dynamic problem solving, and like the food industry offers you many of those problems a day. I mean, it's just like, you just never know where it's coming from. It was crucial for me to get in there and do that. And again, the chaos of running an internationally performing band is like, it's stressful. It's crazy when you get to vent, but also sharpen the sword. You said he's got swords. This is the thing, man. All these martial artists. My instructor, dude's like making knives all the time. He's just sitting back there wielding knives. And like one week he was out because he cut himself with this sword. I was like, okay. I was like, I'm gonna stick to the unarmed combat for right now. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. But I just cannot sing the praises of it enough. Especially right now, you know, with all the crunches that have been put on businesses, especially small businesses, and I mean, performance, forget about it. I mean, who's gotten it worse? It's like jiu-jitsu and performance, because you can't have crowded rooms and you can't have contact.
So have you been practicing at home? Like,
yeah. So we, you know, my wife and my daughters both trained as well. So for like the first month, it was just us. And then we slowly started to get into like once, you know, Brooklyn was off the chain, like so many, you know, mass amounts of people died, and it was just spreading like wildfire here. But once things started to like peter down and everybody kind of got tested and everything, and we're like, we all had it, it was like everybody had it.
Yeah.
We started to get together in small groups, and we've maintained that. So there's like 4 little pods from the school that continue to train and just keep the sword sharp. I'm not looking to get better right now. I'm looking to maintain so that when things open back up, at least I'm not like playing catch up, and the same with business. Like the restaurant here, we were forced to delivery only for 3.5 months. Then it was outdoor seating only for another 3 months or so. And then just recently they allowed 25% indoor dining, which my small little place equates to 12 people at a time, which is it's not easy to run a restaurant that way.
It's a juggling act now. It really is just what's going to change today, adapting. And I'm sure you've seen that. Well, I've definitely seen it a lot, of course, in like the events industry, where it's like you never know what's going to change. So you're on your toes.
Yeah.
Today it's this rule, today it's that rule, and we're rolling with the punches.
Yeah.
Coming back to it, it's martial arts is really, it's a discipline, and it builds on itself and it compounds. So I really am interested to get back into it, especially just for the physical exercise. And
the physical is great. You'll love that. But the mental, like, and when you talk about like added value, it's like, of course, I'm going to go train martial arts. Like most people see it as a hook. It's like, oh, okay, I get to vent. I get the physical, I mean, randori is the best thing ever. If I don't get randori almost daily, I'm like, something's not right. Like I really feel like outside of myself. But when you walk away with like that message, especially if it's a place, like they emphasize the message at the school that I train at. It's like, that's always coming, no matter what, you're going to get the message, and it might not sink in today, but like you'll carry it with you and you hear it enough. And it's like, all right. And the other thing I always think about too, is just like how we used to improvise, playing music. I mean, I just grew to absolutely love free improv because you just never knew what was going to happen. But the goal was always just to make it, the best was to like walk into a gig with guys I'd never played with before, and just we're gonna like improvise. And it's a show. There are people watching, and at the end, people will come up and say like, "Oh, that was really great. How long have you guys been playing together?" And I'm like, it doesn't have to be mind blowing, not like, "Oh my God, that was the best thing ever," just to be like, you pulled it off, like not like I had you fooled, but like I fooled you. Like we just literally entered the chaos. And so between the two, between martial arts and just really like emphasizing a lot on improvisational music, or like I was saying earlier, dealing with a bunch of like singer-songwriters doing their own independent music, a lot of them had never had a drummer before, not like that, or they didn't have a recording, and they would just say like, okay, this is my song, help me, what needs to go under it? And then you negotiate, and martial arts is much the same way, especially when you're training jiu-jitsu. It's like, it's not always about winning, you're negotiating with somebody else's body. Just like it's a constant negotiation. Like, is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? And there's awareness. Like that awareness really. It's like the big guys when you're playing. Like, did we do it now? No. Like it's just increasing that awareness, and that's been the lesson I think recently. It's like you just got to have the big eyes all the time, because you've got the government coming in saying certain things. You have people's fear or lack of negotiating both. Like here at the restaurant, there's some people who are like, I don't think I should have to wear a mask at all. I should be able to eat inside anytime. And I have to say, well, I'm not paying a $10,000 fine, so you're gonna have to take it outside right now, or put it, whatever, towards, and then all the way to the other end, and people are like calling me still. And like, this is the first time I've even gotten takeout in 6 months, and they're concerned, and negotiating. It's like juggling fire, man.
Yeah, and the same with music. When you're with new musicians or just even look at like a corporate and a new work team.
Yeah.
What everybody talks about the most is just sit back and listen. You can figure out what people's strengths are, where they would collaborate best as a team, and then figure out, okay, where do I fit in all this? How can I complement these musicians, these teammates? How can we, get this job done together? And that's the same in DJing, photographer, the wedding venue, the bride and the groom, everybody. So that's a neat way you put it though, negotiating with someone else's body, like when you're, doing moves and doing martial arts. It's neat.
Yeah, well, you said it. It's listening. You know, you really nailed it. Like as a musician, that's what you have, right? You have your ears, you have your eyes, but sometimes you get in, right? And you're like, oh, you're not looking. I get criticized a lot. Like, bro, you disappeared. You were just like, oh, you start biting your lip and everything. Um, we all know that guy.
Yeah.
But it becomes to your ears, and you really like got the point correct when you were talking about like in a company, like you have to listen and negotiate. But we were always stressed to think of jujitsu as a conversation, and nobody wants to train with a guy that's just always like, I'm speaking. Like even one of the most humbling lessons is like to learn, even though you may be better, more advanced, bigger, stronger, whatever, to like give the person some opportunities, you know. And just one of my favorite ones was like, think something different, see something new. Like that was said to us often while we were training in the middle, like our instructor was standing over us. That applies to absolutely everything, especially in those stressful situations. If you just always do, you know, like going back to the quote that you put up is about, you know, seeing something different, but then creating that habit. You know, like you are a product of your habit. So if you're always just doing the same thing and not getting like that great result, if you don't switch your habit up, you know, you're always going to get the same thing, but you need that motivation to like push yourself to find that new habit.
100%. And something too, like a new outlook that I've been looking at, especially in music, is when it comes to DJing or progressing as a musician in the next 10 years, if we look at it that way, I don't want to repeat 1 year of experience and growing and learning 10 times. I want every single year, every single gig to just suck out of it everything I can and then use it on the next gig and improve constantly. And that's the goal, because so many people, you know, they say, oh, I have all this experience, but if you break it down, that's just my greatest fear, is just to say like, oh, I have 10 years of experience, but it's just repeated. And it's like, no, you need to be growing, or if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah, no, there's no, I think this year in particular has taught everybody, like you can never be too comfortable, because, you know, where I'm at, I mean, I knew people that had like high up positions in big companies and they were comfortable. They were like, cool, I'm good. And then something like this and you're laid off and you have no control anymore. You know, you're at the mercy of somebody else. So I like staying on the more edgy side. One of the reasons why I chose to go in business for myself, because it's like, at least you know that the shit's coming down, right? It's like when you work for a big company, you don't get to hear all the backroom talks, and they're like, oh yeah, he's really great, but if anything happened, he would be gone. And you don't know that. Where like, at least me, I get the problems every day. Now I can anticipate them. I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good. And sure enough, they come in and it's not good. But at least I know, and it gives me a little preparation to like, how am I going to respond? Do I have enough money to respond? You know what? Like, is it better to just pay?
Exactly. So are things on the up for you now again after the dip?
It's become more reliable. Like the summer was good for us because we were able to seat outdoors at least. They only opened indoor dining here like 3 weeks ago, and that hasn't been a major boost. Most people still just want to sit outside. But we got to, you know, nothing's normal anymore. It's never, I just like all those years of data, I just like literally closed the book and pushed it aside. Cause I used to look at it like in 2018, be like, well, what do we do on this day in 2017? Well, what was this month like, you know? I'm just like, set it aside, because those expectations will kill you. We have definitely found some success. You know, we found some profitability. We learned a lot of really great lessons. I think the winter is going to pose a number of new problems and bring back some old ones. So we just have to see, you know, and just try to be resilient. But I'm game. I'm up for it. It's better than sitting home all the time. That's not for me. I can't do that. I'd lose my mind. So, you know, just trying to stay at it. All right, we're going to take one more break. I want to come back and I want to talk about what the scene is like in Buffalo as far as all this goes. And then like what your goals are for the future, and like, it seems to me scalability is built into what you want to do. You haven't outright said it, but you kind of alluded to it, and like what your plans are with that. All right, so hang tight, everybody. Come back and get that good juice from my man, Michael. We'll be right back. Welcome back, folks. If you're just tuning in, we have zoomed to Buffalo, New York, an area where I spent a few years of my life studying music, teaching music, and it is such a pleasure to have on one of my former students. He was a teen at the time. Michael Khoury is now a grown man, successful business entrepreneur, cutting his own deals, really working the room. And we've talked about a number of things on the show today. His background in music, a musical family, studying business at the University of Buffalo as well, working in the network marketing industry and applying that to his own musical business. So I'd love to hear about now, like, what is the scene like in terms of especially nightlife in Buffalo? Because it's a city, and they you know, it was a good scene for me when I was there. It seems like it's only grown since then. What's the scene like in terms of venues, you know, restaurants going out, and then like what do we do with that information going forward?
Definitely. I mean, of course, since the beginning of the pandemic, you know, from March till about, goodness, July, you know, there was nothing, absolutely nothing. And then in July began with some weddings where, you know, it was very, very restricted. And, you know, obviously the numbers were cut down a lot. So that kind of got the ball rolling again with some weddings. But mostly from there, it started to transition. Things started pivoting to being outdoor tent weddings. Like everything I've been doing, you know, today I'm going, tomorrow I'm going. Everything is just pop-up tent. I'm sure Buffalo Tent Rental is just making an absolute But you know, people are being as safe as they can at the events also, while just being in the comfort of, you know, a family member's yard, or, you know, their own backyard, where they just kind of have a little bit of freedom to not be on edge while still. But yeah, people are wearing masks. You know, whenever they stand up from the table, they have to have a mask on. Going to the bar, whether it's at a venue or even at like in a tent with a pop-up bar, they're still wearing masks. So things are just pivoting, and a lot of the events are becoming hybrids, where maybe half indoor, half outdoor. So now I'm using, you know, pooling my resources and having to go wireless with some things. And it's just, you know, I've been adapting a lot, for sure. As far as like the Buffalo night scene, I'm not too much into it anymore. As far as like clubs and you know, going out, but it's what I've seen in the Chippewa district, Delaware Avenue. Things have been back up on the, you know, the up and up. The rooftop bars have still had, you know, people. Everybody's sitting. They'll have a DJ, you know, just cranking music. People will be having fun, but people are just a little bit more relaxed, and I could tell that people are just genuinely happy to be out.
Yeah.
So, and one thing I've been keeping in mind, especially at weddings, is a lot of these people haven't really been out for any special occasion, you know, since this thing happened. So I always try to take that into consideration and be, you know, courteous to that too.
Well, you mentioned earlier, you know, from the production level, you're like, I got to listen to photographer and this guy and that guy, but like also the, you know, the who's paying you, and like really honoring their, you know, all their needs and desires. Are they allowing people inside at venues?
So,
like if it's just like a venue and not a restaurant?
Well, venues, the rule as of right now is 50 people.
Okay.
So people had to absolutely scale their guest lists down from like 300 to 50. So in a lot of the venues that are like similarly hybrid, where they can put maybe 20 people inside, another 20, 30 people right outside under a tent with some portable heaters.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are doing the best, because they're not operating in the gray area.
Yeah.
And putting people, you know, in a bad spot, or the health department, you know, becoming a target. So everybody's been a little bit, you know, on edge with it as far as, you know, those venues go. But yeah, it's been interesting. It's been a really interesting year.
Sure. I mean, I love that you're smiling though. You're like, every time you said we had to pivot, and you were like it was fun. Right. You know,
I love the challenge. And when a bride and groom call me and they're you know, they're nervous and everything, I see that as a genuine opportunity to just be like, look, you know, I've seen enough of these where I know how it's going to go. I'm going to do everything I can to help you and make sure everybody's safe, but I'm still going to give you an amazing day. Yeah. And you're not going to have to worry about anything. You know, leave all the official announcing and the flow of the night to me. And it's still going to be a good time. It's not going to be a lame party. You know, people just have to, you know, people have to sit in their chairs sometimes. I have to get them to interact from the chair, because they can't stand up and dance. So, but it's been such a challenge for me, allowing me to grow. And in that, I know that when things open up, all that momentum that I have from dealing with these problems is going to compound, and it's just really going to help me to stand out at that next level, as opposed to just saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to work my job for now, wait for this thing to go over. It's like, no, I'm going to use every opportunity to grow and become all that I can.
That's amazing. So great to hear you say that. So what is your hypothesis, your dreams, your goals for like when things open back up? Where do you want to take this?
My idea is within the very near future, like short range goal, get this to where I can go full time on my own. Just Michael Khoury, I am a business mentality where this is a full-time job for me. It's a full-time income. Then from there, long range goal would be to own something like, a big company too that has many DJs and services, under it. But first, one step at a time. And like we talked about, being realistic, being positive, and just building on what works. And where I see myself right now is just focusing on me, because there's only so many things I can control. And if I focus on me and just slowly build that brick by brick, build the house up, it'll be a solid foundation. So.
And do you see, I assumed you would want that, just like from talking to you, that you'd want to have like DJs under you, you're cutting deals, maybe still working some events, but like really like pulling it all together. Do you see digital services being a part of that long-term plan?
Do you mean like video conferencing grandma and grandpa into the ceremony?
Yeah, whatever. Like however it would show up. There's so many ways. I mean, you could be like giving DJ instruction. I'm just trying to think of all the different ways you could utilize like and the real scalable, the scalable aspects of that business. Is that, I mean, because you're heavily in getting entrenched in media now. Like, is there a thought on roping that in and making that also a source of revenue?
100%. Absolutely. Something that I would use too to provide value is like to basically review equipment. So for the DJ industry, review all that equipment. For brides and grooms, review the holistic approach of their entire day, how things are going to go, and just become like that kind of one-stop shop for, the wedding and event industry.
Yeah.
But like you said, using media is, I always kind of downplayed it because I just focused on the music. I'm like, I'm just,
Same.
All I want to do is rock out and go do my job and then just relax after. And then just in the last 5 years, I just had a pivot where I'm like, no, there's so much more that I can tap in.
Yeah, same. After all this time work, focusing so much on the content, whether it was like an album or music for a show or the food, because I got into food and beverage because I love it. I love to make like an amazing drink, an amazing dish. I want to share that. I want everybody to be like, oh, wow, this is awesome, And then I realized at a certain point, like you can make the most fascinating thing in the world, but if you have no reach, I was like, oh man. And then, at first I didn't really know. I remember when I first got into social media and like posts and the copy, I was like, someone came to our wine store and they were like, who does your photography? And I was like, oh, me. And they were like, it sucks. And I was like, God damn. And then it was like, all right, time to step this up. But I love photography too. And I didn't realize that until I started to take it serious. I was like, man, I really enjoy this. And so it was a hard lesson to learn. But then at a certain point, it was just like, this is all super fascinating. So we're going to have to wrap it up. Where can people find out information about you or get in contact with you if they would so choose?
Absolutely. As of right now, Instagram, mckhoury91. And I'll type it out because my last name's Lebanese. It's a little bit hard to spell, but MCKHOURY and then 91 is my handle on Instagram. And then Facebook is Mike.Khoury2. And of course, very soon I'll have my site up and running and Wedding Wire and the Knot and all that as well, just for me personally. And keep, of course I keep all my relationships too with all the companies I work with, but just for me, it's like we talk about, like Gary Vee talks about, Grant Cardone, all the greats, building that personal brand, because at the end of the day, you are all you can rely on.
Yep, 100%.
But thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to see you.
Like I said, this has been surreal. Like we haven't spoken, and just to see you like go from that and hear you say some of the things you're saying today, like I can't tell you how awesome it is. So
dude, really. Your lessons still, me and Alex talk about it. I said it in the beginning, I'll say it again. The grooves that we learned together will forever just stay in my soul, and they transfer to every gig I do. I just always have that as a musician and you as a friend. And thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. We'll catch back up soon, okay?
You got it.
All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next Friday. Peace out.